Who are these Greek gods and goddesses? Ancient Greek religion was based on the belief that there were 12 gods and goddesses that ruled the universe from Mount Olympus, Greece. Mount Olympus was the mythical home of the 12 gods in ancient Greek history. According to the myth, the mountain was created after the Titanomachy, an epic battle between the young Olympians gods and the Titans. When the Olympian gods won the battle, they created their new majestic home. In Greek mythology, Mount Olympus was regarded as the abode of the gods and the site of the throne of Zeus. The name Olympus was used for several other mountains as well as hills, villages, and mythical personages in Greece and Asia Minor. Number 1. Zeus, the god of the sky. Zeus is the sky and thunder god in ancient Greek religion, who rules as king of the gods of Mount Olympus. Zeus was the most powerful of the Greek gods and had a number of powers. His most famous power is the ability to throw lightning bolts. His winged horse Pegasus carried his lightning bolts and he trained an eagle to retrieve them. He could also control the weather, causing rain and huge storms. Zeus also had other powers. He could mimic people's voices to sound like anyone. He could also shape-shift so that he looked like an animal or a person. If people made him angry, sometimes he would turn them into animals as punishment. Number 2. Poseidon, the god of the sea. Poseidon is a god in Greek mythology and one of the 12 Olympians. He is one of the 3 most powerful Greek gods, along with Zeus and Hades, and rules over the ocean and all bodies of water. He was especially important to Greek sailors and fishermen. Poseidon is pictured with a 3-pronged spear called a trident. He usually has curly hair and a beard. Sometimes he is shown riding his chariot, which is pulled by hippocampuses, horses that have fishtails. Poseidon had complete power and control over the ocean. He could create storms to sink ships or clear weather to help them along. He also could cause earthquakes on land, which earned him the title Earthshaker. Poseidon and his brothers, Zeus and Hades, went to battle with the Titans. They overthrew the Titans and took control of the world. They divided up the world by drawing lots. Poseidon drew the ocean and took control of the sea, Zeus drew the sky and Hades the underworld. Number 3. Ares, the god of war. Ares was the Greek god of war and one of the 12 major Greek gods who lived on Mount Olympus. He was known for being violent and cruel, but also cowardly. Most of the other Olympians, including his parents Hera and Zeus, didn't like Ares very much. Ares was the ancient Greek god of war, or, more properly, the spirit of battle. He represented the distasteful aspects of brutal warfare and slaughter. However, unlike Athena, he represents merely its destructive capacity and is typically the personification of sheer violence and brutality. Consequently, he was loved neither by gods nor by men. Ares was usually pictured as a warrior carrying a spear and a shield. He sometimes wore armor and a helmet. When traveling, he rode a chariot pulled by 4 fire-breathing horses. Number 4. Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. Aphrodite is the Greek goddess of love and beauty. She is a member of the 12 Olympian gods who live on Mount Olympus. She is famous for being the most beautiful of the goddesses. She even won a contest. Like all the Greek Olympic gods, Aphrodite was immortal and very powerful. Her special powers were those of love and desire. She had a belt that had the power to cause others to fall in love with the wearer. Some of the other Greek goddesses, such as Hera, would borrow the belt from time to time. Aphrodite had the ability to cause fighting couples to fall in love again. Number 5. Hera, the goddess of women, marriage, and childbirth. Hera is a goddess in Greek mythology and one of the 12 Olympians. As the wife of Zeus, Hera was considered the queen of Mount Olympus. She is most associated as the goddess of women, marriage, and childbirth. She represented the ideal woman, was the goddess of marriage and the family, and protectress of women in childbirth. Although always faithful herself, Hera was most famous for her jealous and vengeful nature, principally aimed against the lovers of her husband and their illegitimate children. As the queen of Olympus and a major goddess, Hera was considered very powerful. The women of Greece prayed to Hera for protection during childbirth, good health, and to aid them in their marriages. She also had power over the skies and could bless the people with clear skies or curse them with storms. Hera was usually pictured wearing flowing robes, a crown, and holding a lotus scepter. Sometimes she was shown sitting on a throne or riding a chariot drawn by peacocks. Number 6. Demeter, the goddess of harvest. Demeter is the Greek goddess of the harvest, grain, and fertility. She is one of the 12 Olympian gods that live on Mount Olympus. Because she was the goddess of the harvest, she was very important to the farmers and peasant people of Greece. Like all the Olympian gods, Demeter was immortal and very powerful. She had control over the harvest and the growing of grains. She could cause plants to grow or not grow and had control over the seasons. She also had some control over the weather and could make people hungry. As goddess of the harvest, Demeter was worshipped by the people of Greece as they depended on good crops for food and survival. The main temple to Demeter was located a short distance from the city of Athens in a sanctuary at Eleusis. Secret rites were held each year at the sanctuary, called the Eleusinian Mysteries. The Greeks believed these rites were important in ensuring good crops. Demeter was often pictured as a mature woman sitting on a throne. She wore a crown and carried a torch or sheaves of wheat. When Demeter was traveling, she rode a golden chariot pulled by dragons. Number 7. Athena, the goddess of strategy. Athena became the goddess of crafts and skilled peacetime pursuits in general. She was particularly known as the patroness of spinning and weaving. That she ultimately became allegorized to personify wisdom and righteousness was a natural development of her patronage of skill. Athena is a goddess in Greek mythology and one of the 12 Olympians. She is most famous for being the patron god of the city of Athens. Athena also helped many of the Greek heroes such as Hercules and Odysseus on their adventures. Athena's special powers included the ability to invent useful items and crafts. She invented the ship, chariot, plow, and rake. She also invented many of the skills used by women in ancient Greece such as weaving and pottery. Like all the Olympians, Athena was an immortal goddess and could not die. She was one of the most intelligent and wisest of the Greek gods. She was also good at war strategy and giving heroes courage. Number 8. Apollo, god of the sun, music, and poetry. Apollo is the Greek god of music, poetry, light, prophecy, and medicine. He is one of the 12 Olympian gods who live on Mount Olympus. Artemis, the Greek goddess of hunting, is his twin sister. He was the patron god of the city of Delphi. Like all the Olympian gods, Apollo was an immortal and powerful god. He had many special powers including the ability to see into the future and power over light. He could also heal people or bring illness and disease. When in battle, Apollo was deadly with the bow and arrow. From the time of Homer onward, Apollo was the god of divine distance, the god who made mortals aware of their own guilt and purified them of it, who presided over religious law and the constitutions of cities, and who communicated with mortals his knowledge of the future and the will of his father, Zeus. Apollo was pictured as a handsome athletic youth with curly hair. He usually had a laurel wreath about his head that he wore in honor of his love for Daphne. Sometimes he was shown holding a bow and arrow or a lyre. When traveling, Apollo rode a chariot pulled by swans. Number 9. Artemis, goddess of the hunt. Artemis is the Greek goddess of the hunt, wilderness, moon and archery. She is the twin sister of the god Apollo and one of the 12 Olympian gods who live on Mount Olympus. She spends much of her time in the forest surrounded by animals such as hunting dogs, bears, and deer. Like all the Greek Olympic gods, Artemis was immortal and very powerful. Her special powers included perfect aim with the bow and arrow, the ability to turn herself and others into animals, healing, disease, and control of nature. When Artemis turned 3 years old, she asked her father Zeus for 6 wishes: to never get married, to have more names than her brother Apollo, to have a bow and arrows made by the Cyclops, and a knee-length hunting tunic to wear, to bring light to the world, to have 60 nymphs for friends who will tend to her hounds, to have all the mountains as her domain. Zeus couldn't resist his little girl and granted her all her wishes. Artemis is generally pictured as a young girl wearing a knee-length tunic and armed with her bow and arrow. She often is shown accompanied by forest creatures such as deer and bears. When traveling, Artemis rides a chariot pulled by 4 silver stags. Number 10. Hephaestus, god of fire, blacksmiths, craftsmen, and volcanoes. Hephaestus was the Greek god of fire, blacksmiths, craftsmen, and volcanoes. He lived in his own palace on Mount Olympus, where he crafted tools for the other gods. He was known as a kind and hardworking god, but also had a limp and was considered ugly by the other gods. He was very skilled in metalworking, stonework, and other crafts that were typically performed by Greek men. He could control both fire and metal to do his will. He also had the ability to make his creations move. He used this power to create 2 golden handmaidens who assisted him in his work. Hephaestus, Greek Hephaestos, in Greek mythology, the god of fire. Originally a deity of Asia Minor and the adjoining islands, in particular Lemnos, Hephaestus had an important place of worship at the Lycian Olympus. Hephaestus returned to Olympus by acting as a mediator between Zeus and Hera, as well as showcasing his metalwork as a gift he can offer both mankind and the gods. Hephaestus was a mild and peaceful god who watched after the cattle of Geryon, while Hercules searched for a missing bull. Hephaestus was usually shown working at a fiery forge with his hammer, tongs, and an anvil. He wasn't a good-looking man, but he was very strong due to his work as a blacksmith. Unlike many of the other Greek gods, he did not ride a chariot, but rode a donkey. Number 11. Hermes, the messenger god, also god of travel, roads, thieves, sports, and shepherds. Hermes was a Greek god and one of the 12 Olympians who lived on Mount Olympus. His main job was to serve as the messenger of the gods. He was able to travel very fast and could easily move between the realms of the gods, humans, and the dead. He was known as a cunning trickster. Hermes was the ancient Greek god of trade, wealth, luck, fertility, animal husbandry, sleep, language, thieves, and travel. Like all the Greek gods, Hermes was immortal, he couldn't die, and very powerful. His special skill was speed. He was the fastest of the gods and used his speed to carry messages for the other gods. He helped lead the dead to the underworld and could put people to sleep with his wand. Hermes was usually pictured as a young, athletic god without a beard. He wore winged sandals, which gave him super speed, and sometimes a winged cap. He also carried a special staff called a caduceus which had wings at the top and was entwined by 2 snakes. Number 12. Dionysus, god of wine, theater, and fertility. Dionysus was a Greek god and one of the 12 Olympians who lived on Mount Olympus. He was the god of wine, which was a very important part of the culture of ancient Greece. He was the only Olympic god that had one parent that was immortal, his mother Semele. Like all of the 12 Olympians, Dionysus was an immortal and powerful god. He had special powers of making wine and causing vines to grow. He could also transform himself into animals such as a bull or a lion. One of his special powers was the ability to drive mortals insane. He was usually shown as a young man with long hair. Unlike the other male gods of Mount Olympus, Dionysus wasn't athletic looking. He often wore a crown made of ivy, animal skins or a purple robe, and carried a staff called the thyrsus which had a pine cone on the end. He had a magical wine cup that was always filled with wine.
Thank you for watching. This is the Curious Lazy Juan saying, if you're curious about something, Google it.